XG's latest album, The Core, is not a work that suddenly launched into a deep concept. Carefully tracing the roughly 4 years from their debut song, Tippy Toes, to the present, based on release order, official information, and performances, reveals that XG's story has consistently been one moving toward its the core from the very beginning. The beginning of XG, Tippy Toes, was vastly different from a typical debut song. It was an entity that appeared in the world quietly, on tiptoe, without self-introduction or revelation of identity. This beginning felt less like a birth and more like an intrusion or contact with the world. Furthermore, there is the fact that XG was originally planned to debut as an 8-member group with Mascara. Had things gone as planned, the story's opening would have been a declaration of a fully formed self from the very start. But in reality, the number changed, and the story began with Tippy Toes. Through this choice, XG appeared to the world not as a completed entity, but as an unknown entity. It seems to me that here lies the first major foreshadowing of the story. In Mascara, XG declares, "I am me," for the first time. This is not a declaration of war against the world, nor is it a will to change fate. It is simply an act of separating one's selfhood from the gaze of others. It is the moment when a formless existence first takes on the contours of self. In Mascara, XG declared, "I am who I am." Then, in Shooting Star, they came to know their place, not as those looking up, but as those shining. What Left-Right depicts is the choice of how to move forward from there.
Drop the fit, we killed it. Don't we all deserve it? I'll tell you how we want it. Oh, left, right, you've been here before, so do it till you get right. Get it one more.
Through these two songs, XG may have begun choosing for themselves how to live for the very first time. I felt that was the moment their will was born. Because they began choosing their own direction, there were things they could finally see. Here, XG turns their gaze inward for the first time, toward the question of how they themselves were created. This was not an attempt to find an answer, but an act of questioning their own origin. What followed understanding was not clarity, but emotions that could not be processed. In 4 seasons, XG portrays a human lifetime. However, this is not time meant for living, but time meant to be passed through, once until the very end. Here, XG becomes an entity that has experienced being human. They learned the structure, passed through emotions, and traced the entirety of human time. Even so, the answer is still not spoken. And so, XG chooses not to move forward, but to return. And then, on January 12th, 2026, XG renamed themselves Extraordinary Gene. After a 4-year journey, just before reaching their origin, this was the moment they finally claimed their true name. Approximately 8 days later, from January 20th at 11:30 p.m. to around 12:20 a.m. on January 21st, a mysterious live stream was broadcast from XG's official account. A viewpoint resembling surveillance cameras. Time moving back and forth, glitches, freezes, and finally, a gaze directed straight at us. This did not feel like a simple broadcast. It felt more like a final observation log, recorded just before entering the origin. A being that had remembered its true form replayed records of the past, present, and future, and, in the end, looked back at the side that had been observing itself all along. It may have been a moment of preparation and of resolve before stepping into the core. The core is not the beginning of a new story. As described officially, it is the origin of existence itself, a journey that transcends time and space, and a declaration of what XG truly is. It also feels symbolic that the representative track is titled Hypnotize. Here, hypnotize does not mean domination or control. It refers to a state of being drawn deep into consciousness. You may not know why, but you find yourself captivated. You watch again and again. Before you realize it, it stays with you. Perhaps that is the core that XG has arrived at, beginning with intrusion, gaining a self, forming a will, becoming aware of structure, experiencing humanity, traveling through time, remembering their true form, replaying their records, and finally, heading back to the origin. XG's 4-year journey was not merely a record of growth, but a story that had been heading toward its origin from the very beginning. That is how I see it.